Good morning, Illini, and welcome back. I'm Matt Schrock as always, and I'm glad you're here. Fall is officially upon us, football is starting, pumpkin patches are opening, and we continue to offer conversations about keeping you well to excel. I hope you're settling into your groove and the homework gods are smiling upon you. But I gotta say, today I am really excited about this episode of Healthy Illini. Not only are we hopefully going to help you learn something, but I know that I'm going to learn something, and as a subscriber to the idea of lifelong learning, I can't wait. So let's dive into today's edition to the Healthy Illini podcast. So as always, here at Healthy Illini, we try and bring a variety of health and well-being topics, and today is no different. Today we're going to be talking about eating disorders, something that, to be honest, I know very little about in depth. I've heard of them, obviously. And I'm sure that there are some things that I have misconceptions about. And that's part of what we want to do here is we want to start conversations that allow us to get deeper into it, allow us to grow, allow us to have opportunity to learn about things that we don't know much about. And so I'm really excited to have these guests here today. First up, we have Ashley Peters. Ashley is a registered dietitian at McKinley Health Center. She works out of the health education unit and has been working with McKinley for 5 years. So Ashley, thank you for being here.
Hi, thanks for having me.
And we're also joined by a student. Emily is a student here at UIUC. Now, for confidentiality purposes, Emily is not her real name, but I'm so grateful that you're here. I'm thankful that you're willing to be a part of this.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So let's start with Ashley here. Let's just get a baseline for what we're talking about. Ashley, if you could just share a little bit about what is an eating disorder, or for this conversation, we may call it ED. But just kind of give us a little bit of a background of what that means.
Yeah, so I think like you, a lot of students also have misconceptions about what is an eating disorder, what does that look like, and it is thick on a college campus. Whether it be an eating disorder or an unhealthy relationship with food or a very toxic diet culture, it's thick on campus. And so really the job here is just educating students about what that could potentially look like. So an eating disorder is this intense desire for thinness, for losing weight. And honestly, it's a coping mechanism for other things that could be potentially going on here. Stress, and we saw a lot of it during COVID. I mean, if you needed a time to cope with anything, COVID was that time, right? People were coping with things in a multitude of ways, whether it be drinking, eating, or just not eating. So eating disorders can definitely look like anorexia, where they are restricting intake, not getting in enough calories, not getting enough energy. There's bulimia, where they're purging, and that could be daily, that could be weekly. That looks like a multitude of different things. Binge eating, I always call it the restrict binge cycle, where we're restricting and then we're binging, and then we're restricting and then we're binging. And then orthorexia, and that is really focusing on eating ultra healthy foods, and we call it clean eating, being really obsessive with only eating certain types of foods that we've deemed good and good for our bodies. But a lot of my students don't identify with having an eating disorder, and that could just be that they have this unhealthy relationship with food, where it's taking up a lot of your thought process. So what I typically see is that you have a hard time with relationships. It's hard studying in school all day. It's hard concentrating. And that's because your brain process is just constantly overanalyzing food and exercise and counting calories. And it takes up a big part of what you're able to think about throughout the day. So daily tasks just become really challenging. And once that kind of like comes into play, I mean, going to school just becomes a lot more difficult.
You've already triggered so many questions I want to ask. Like there's so many things that you just talked about that really just scratch the surface of what's going on and the complexity of an eating disorder, the complexity of the cause and the treatment and things like that. But you did mention one thing. You said it's an unhealthy relationship with food.
Mm-hmm.
How would you describe a healthy relationship with food? What does that even look like?
Yeah, I think it's good, especially me being a dietitian. My job is to showcase a healthy relationship with food to my students and to anyone surrounding me. So I'm not a dietitian that's sitting around eating carrot sticks all day. I need to show people that there is no good food and there is no bad food. What we're really trying to do is eat a balanced diet. And I'm not even doing that every day. Like, we're trying to sprinkle in some fruits and vegetables. We're trying to do some of these healthy things for our body. But I mean, your girl's getting donuts on the weekends, and she's going to be over at the pumpkin patch getting an apple donut at Curtis Orchard probably too. And we can play around with food, and we're not just eating food for nutrition. We're eating playful foods as well, foods for taste. I always say we have taste buds for a reason, and that's because we're supposed to enjoy our food. And we're supposed to enjoy our fruits and vegetables too. So, I mean, I'm dipping my carrots in ranch if I'm eating carrots, and I'm putting butter on my food, and I'm using cheese on my broccoli, and my food's going to taste good. Like, we're eating real food. I'm not interested in low fat this or no fat that or low sodium types of things. I want to eat the real food that tastes good and that feels good in my body.
And I really, I'm thrilled with the information you're giving, with the perspective from a professional in this. But one of the things we really want to do here at Healthy Illini is make sure that we have a student voice. And so I really want to bring in our guest, because this is an amazing opportunity. And Emily, thank you so much for your willingness to come, for your willingness to talk about it, because one of my intentions is to make this a safe place, to make this a place where you can be your authentic self, where you can talk about learning to find out who your authentic self is, and that journey. And so I just really, really want to say thank you for being here today. It means a lot. And but I wanted to just start off with, you've been working with Ashley. What brought you to work with her, and how did you connect with her?
So it's a little bit interesting. It happened unintentionally at first, where I didn't think that there was anything wrong or unhealthy about my relationship with food at all. I prided myself on eating really healthy, on exercising a lot, and I thought those were all really great things for me to be doing. And eventually one of my friends, she noticed that I was dizzy a lot and like blacking out when we exercised together. And she told me that I should just make a doctor's appointment at McKinley to see what was going on. And so I did, and the physician ended up referring me to Ashley. And I went into that first appointment thinking, all right, I'm going to go in, I'm going to show that I eat really healthy. It's going to be great. And then I'll leave and we'll be done. And so I went in with that as my goal and left the first appointment. I don't think I scheduled a follow-up even. But then a couple months later, the pandemic started. There were a lot of new stressors, and I noticed that a lot of the thoughts and behaviors around food that I was already struggling with, but able to sort of manage when things were going normally, intensified and became a lot more to try and deal with. And at that point is when I reached back out and scheduled another appointment to try and work on those things.
I want to interject real quick. I appreciate that you said you were going to come in, you're going to show, look, I'm healthy, I'm eating well, I'm good. So what were your preconceived ideas? What was your opinion of an eating disorder prior to starting to work with Ashley? Because a lot of students have that. They hear eating disorder and they have, this is what that means. For you, what was that like, that preconceived idea?
Yeah, so I'm going to start with what my preconceived notion of a healthy diet and what that looked like. For me, that looked like eating as little as possible or staying below a calorie limit, eating a lot of fruits and vegetables and as unprocessed as possible, as plain as possible, and then exercising as much as I could. And I think that especially on college campuses, that's very common, that sort of approach. And my preconception of an eating disorder, and I think a lot of people have an image of what an eating disorder looks like, where someone doesn't eat anything, they're extremely visibly underweight, and they end up needing like very intensive like inpatient treatment in a hospital. And so that's what I thought, that's an eating disorder. And since I didn't fit that, I thought, oh, that's not me, nothing's wrong. And something that I think a lot of people struggle with when deciding to reach out for treatment is not feeling sick enough. So that's something that also plays into that.
That is like, if I can get someone in my door, typically that's a great first step, but getting them there because they're like, I'm not skin and bones. My BMI, which I absolutely like don't stand for, is within normal. So it's very confusing at first. And it's been a big part of your like work that we've done together is this idea of sick enough. And so something that the eating disorder community struggles with is taking up space, physically, emotionally taking up space, and even feeling guilty about being in my schedule at times. Like, should I really be there when it could be someone else? Because I'm not sick enough, right? And that is where we have to even like educate people. An eating disorder doesn't look like anything. It's not, you can't walk next to someone and say they have an eating disorder, because even if you see someone who's super thin, they might have something medically going on here. You have to get down into their relationship with food, past traumas, things like that, in order to know if someone is struggling with an eating disorder. And sick enough is something that I keep wanting to like reinforce too, is because if I can catch this and we can start treatment and get a therapist on board earlier, your outcome is going to be so much greater. It's when people come in and this has been going on for 10 years and it's never been addressed that I'm like, oh, this could be a really long journey. And this could be something that follows you into your career, your family life, and you're still dealing with this 20 years later. Where if you're just starting this like preconceived notion of like, oh, wait, is this an unhealthy relationship with food? And you get in sooner, outcome is way better.
And you've said something a couple times, and I want to ask, and honestly, I'm not really sure how to ask it, and I could be totally wrong in what I'm hearing. But what I'm hearing is, or at least what I'm interpreting is, that an eating disorder is actually almost like a symptom of something else, in that you're talking about stress, you're talking about trauma, you're talking about perceptions that aren't necessarily anything to do with food itself, but that's how it manifests in that trauma. And you mentioned COVID, and Emily, you mentioned the stress of the shutdown as well. That is it possible that that's why people don't think, oh, I have an eating disorder, because they're not thinking about that. They're thinking about the stress or the trauma, and then to cope, they're using an unhealthy relationship with food. Does that make sense?
Totally. We see a lot of like anxiety, depression, trauma within the eating disorder community. And so that's why 9 times out of 10, I'm not going to work with someone unless a therapist is on board. Like, I'm the dietitian, I'm going over food, normalizing food, making sure we're eating balanced and things like that. But yes, there's definitely, anxiety, depression is your 2 biggest components. And then we see people wanting to control something in our life. During COVID, we couldn't control anything. We couldn't even control if we were going to work or not, right? So what's something I do know how to control?
Yeah.
I know how to control what I'm willing to eat, and they get really good at it. Yeah. What they allow themselves to eat, when they allow themselves to eat, I can control that.
Well, there was also a really heavy push during the shutdown of, well, now use this time to work on yourself. And a lot of that was, you need to get healthy, you need to look a certain way, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, whatever you want. There was this real push. And if you weren't learning a new skill, if you weren't improving your health, your eating habits, then you were failing to a degree.
Right.
And there was a lot of pressure on that.
Yeah, a lot of COVID, don't gain the COVID-19 pounds, right? And I'm like,
quarantine 15.
The quarantine 15. And I'm like, we are going through, we literally heard at the grocery stores, right? There might not be enough food on the shelves.
Yeah.
So when your body is going through that much stress and you're literally hearing there might not be enough food on you, what is your body going to do to protect itself? It's going to gain weight.
Yeah. You're
going to gain weight. Your cortisol is going to go up. You are going to naturally start, your body is preparing that there's going to be a famine, right? And so your body is going to gain weight. If your body wasn't gaining weight during that time, yeah, maybe you were doing some like extreme exercise or like extreme dieting, things like that. But gaining weight during the pandemic was totally normal. And I'm like, it's okay. Let's see what happens after the pandemic, right? Our body is going to fluctuate up and it could fluctuate potentially back down too. Like, let's see what happens. But there was a lot of social media out there getting in people's heads about do not be the lazy person at home during these 2 weeks, not working on yourself.
Yeah.
I think something that's been a big part of this for me also is detaching food and appearance and body size from morality, because that's something that our society does a lot, is looks at what people eat or how their body looks and then makes judgments about their morals or their character or their personality based on those things. When really there's no correlation. People look the way that they do because of genetics. people eat the foods that they eat for all kinds of different reasons, accessibility, preference. And so that's been a really big part of this process for me, is learning to filter those messages and really think about them more critically.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I was actually going to try and transition. The downside of this podcast is that we get into topics that we could spend hours talking about, and viably talking about for hours. And we will get more resources at the end for where you can follow up and get more information. We want to continue the conversation. And if there's feedback on this, people want to know more, they have questions, we'll come back and we'll do another one. We'll do a follow-up series and that sort of thing. Just, engage with us, and we'll know how to answer some of these things. But we talked a little bit about the idea and the triggers and the signs and things like that. But I want to take it to the next step, and I'm especially glad that Emily's here to answer some of these as you feel comfortable. If you would talk a little bit about what this journey has been like for you since you started looking for some treatment, since you've been in treatment, mainly what improvements are you seeing? How are you doing those steps to readjust your thinking, and especially what are some of the biggest wins that you've had? What are some of your proudest moments in this journey?
Yeah, so it has been a long process. I've struggled with an unhealthy relationship with food on and off to varying degrees since high school. So this was me trying to do a complete 180 of everything that I've thought for the last 5 or 6 years. And something that was frustrating for me at first is that really takes a lot of time and work. And so I have been working with Ashley on the food side of things, also with a therapist, started medication for anxiety. And so all of those things together have been a part of the journey. And there have been a lot of things that I've gained from it, though. I remember the physical changes I felt pretty much right away. Like the first day that I actually sat down and ate a balanced breakfast first thing in the morning, I had so much more energy. I did a workout like I normally would, and I was able to get through it. I didn't have to stop running and walk. And so those changes I felt right away. The mental side of things took a little bit longer, and there have been 2 components to that, where the first would be feeling anxious about something, but being able to recognize that thought pattern and go through with the action anyway. Whether that's, being anxious about cooking a meal with my friends because I can't control what they're putting in the food or what they might bring, but I'm still going to eat breakfast for dinner with them and watch The Bachelorette because that's a lot of fun, and that's become more important to me than the fact that my friend made scrambled eggs with butter. And then the other side is some things have gotten to a point where I just don't even really think about it anymore. Like I went out for dinner with some friends the other night. One of them transferred schools after our freshman year, so I haven't seen her in 18 months. And I was just really excited to get to spend time with these people who I haven't seen in a while. And the food was secondary to all of that. So that's been one of the really big wins for me, is just having so much more of that mental space and feeling like I have a personality for the first time, where I'm not just tired and stressed and just trying to get through the day, check the boxes in terms of homework assignments, what I've eaten, the workouts that I've done. I think Ashley asked me about a year ago what I do for fun, and I didn't really have an answer. But now I've been able to develop hobbies. I'm a lot closer with my friends, and I've been able to meet more people. It's improved my relationships a lot. I've been able to think more about what I want to do after college and really set those plans in place. So I think the biggest win for me has been having all that mental space and getting to figure out who I am outside of an unhealthy relationship with food.
Yeah, I will never forget the day that you told me, like, I feel like I have my personality back. And like that has stuck with me. You're like, I didn't even have the energy to have a personality. And I think so many of my students can actually relate to that. I'm like, talking with your friend is really exhausting to you, isn't it? Because your brain needs food. Your brain needs carbohydrates. Like your brain wants about 600 calories a day on top of finals, on top of everything else you're doing. And so when your brain's not getting the energy at once, it can't take on like the issue your roommate's having and what your partner's family is doing. It can't take on all that other stuff. It can't even hardly engage in a social interaction. So you feel kind of a little shut off at times, where when we start getting you fed again and starting getting some energy back going, I mean, that's when things like really also started clicking for you. You said to me one day, you said, I didn't know food can make me actually feel this good. because it's always been such a trigger for you. Food has always been such a negative association where you're like, wow, food actually makes me, I didn't know I had to was feeling that bad.
Yeah, that was something else that just blew my mind, is I didn't realize for a long time that I was feeling anxious and detached and tired and stressed all the time because I wasn't eating enough. I thought that those things were a reason to eat less, when really it was the other way around, and eating more and then working through all of the emotions that brought up has made all the other things a lot easier to manage.
Well, again, we could spend a long time on this, and but we are running bumping up on our time a little bit, so I do want to give a little bit of space here for Ashley to talk about a few things. I know you have a new campaign you're coming out with. If you would share a little bit about that campaign, but then also some resources that students could use if they want to have more conversation on this, or if they're looking for some help or some answers.
Yeah, I'm so excited for fall. We are launching a new campaign here at McKinley Health Center called Making Peace with Your Plate. And it's a 4-pillar campaign where we're going to be talking about your relationship with food, about your relationship with your body and body acceptance, your mental wellness, and something I call joyful movement, where I don't like to call things exercise. I like to call it joyful movement. So that way we have healthy boundaries there. And so this is just really to educate students about services that they have and start making them recognize that maybe some of their conversations that they're having with their friends or their roommates is participating in diet culture and can potentially be very toxic, and educating students about resources that they have on campus and within the community that they can start accessing. So I am within the health education unit, and I like students to know that is paid for with your student health fee. So you're not going to come and work with me and be charged like a copay or anything like that. So you can make a one-on-one appointment with me, a dietitian here. You're going to be seeing a lot of marketing going on with this Making Peace with Your Plate campaign. Hopefully you're going to be seeing some digital ads. I'm going to have a self-assessment where you answer 5 questions and then know whether or not you should make an appointment with myself. But it never hurts to get in, be seen. Who cares? What if we just talk about making a grocery list? What if we just talk about incorporating some better snacks for you throughout the day? It's never going to hurt to just come in and book that one-on-one appointment with me. I work really closely with the counseling center, and I'm a part of the eating disorder treatment team. So you can make an appointment over at the counseling center to do what's called an ED assessment, where they will do an assessment there for you. And then I just have a ton of contacts within the community as well, of therapists that you can work with in order to get that treatment as well.
I appreciate all that information, and we'll have links in the description of this episode. So if you want to make an appointment with Ashley or another dietitian here at McKinley, you can. Ashley, thank you for being here and sharing. Emily, thank you so much for being here. As I said, the nutrition peers with other students, but on a personal level, I want to say thank you. You're an inspiration. You're someone that I really respect in this. I have a daughter, and we talk a lot. She's in high school. We talk a lot about body image. We talk a lot about food and things like that. And so I just personally really appreciate you being here today. Thank you.
And thank you for the opportunity to talk about all of this.
We truly want this podcast to be a place that you feel comfortable, to be genuine and authentic, no matter where you find yourself. And sometimes those topics can be a little uncomfortable or unfamiliar, and that's okay. Because here at Healthy Illini, you have permission to grow, to ask questions, to not know everything. We want to engage with you and offer you ways to engage with other people and other experts. As Ashley mentioned, there are a lot of resources. You can find them in the episode description. And if you want to know more, or you find something shared today that really resonated with you, please reach out. Let's connect and grow together. But thank you for joining us today. You are on a personal journey, no matter where you are in it. You are important and you matter. Your health and wellness are important and matter. And we are here to keep you well to excel. Go have a great week, Illini. Let us know how you're doing, and we'll catch you next week on Healthy Illini.